But what I want to talk about here for a second, just to try to get into this because it's so important when you're dealing with cats, is the eye points. Now, eyes are really, really critical. And I said to you, I can't stress enough when you talk about the window to the soul. Because even if I just had a simple sphere like this, a ball-shaped thing that I was doing, even if I just started with the eyes, and I'm just going to put sort of place the spherical area that I want those eyes to be in, I can adjust that, I can have them be further apart, I can have them be closer together. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to show you how it does matter in terms of how the impression is. What matters is that what are they doing? I want to sit there and say, you know, is this character looking up? Because the second that I start to connect with the audience of a character, and I'm doing this because I would assume this would be some color. The black area in the middle allows me to really give it sort of that contrast, and it is the area that, you know, that I think that helps. I think that I have a little bit of a problem, and some of the old guys, Frank Thomas used to say that when you're drawing an eyeball, that the larger you make the actual area in the center, the larger, the more appealing it is. If you have an eye shape and you have sort of a the Simpsons type of eye or something like that, it has a tendency to be more distant to the audience. I mean, you can apply that to something. Also, as you know, is when we're in dark areas, our eyes have a tendency to open up because we're letting more light into our eyes. That has a tendency to make your eyes look bigger. Models with large eyes, obviously, are more appealing. The more beady the eyes, you've heard the expression that, you know, he had beady eyes and a weak chin, and it's sort of, you know, we associate these things to characters or to personalities more specific. In this case, you know, I think Frank Thomas was right on. I mean, going back even to the early Mickey Mouses, when you make those eyes appealing and make them feel like they're connecting, you start to reveal what's going on, and the eyebrows become an extension of that. I can sit there and say, if I just look at this, but the second I do this, I change exactly what that means. I have this shape pushing down. I'm getting this brow look over here. If I have it the same thing and it's pushing down, everything is this. Instantly, those eyes are communicating something absolutely different. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I want to show you how dynamic the attitude of the eyes changes just by simply changing the expressions of the eyes. So now I'm going to go basically in here and I'm just going to erase these eyes. And I'm going to sit there and start to move them up. I'm going to push these up. I'm going to create sort of a very concerned, almost sad sort of a look up. Instantly that changes the expression. Now, what does that mean? What that means is that the shape of the eyebrows are symbols that we communicate to people, to everybody that we know, which allows someone to even unconsciously, if they sit in a chair and someone walk up and say, "What's wrong? You don't feel well?" Well, it's because you're communicating outside of the eyes themselves. You're communicating something with your eyebrows, you know, the muscles in your face. It might be creating a sort of a sad shape. These are symbols that we are used to seeing in everybody around us. We're not taught this. It's not something that we learn per se, even though you're learning it now. But it's something that we know intuitively. So by studying this aspect of it, you can apply that to your characters, and thereby what you do is you actually project an emotion in a still drawing to whoever it is you want to draw this for, whatever it is, that actually says, this is what I'm feeling. And this is what's exciting about this, because everything else then will follow through. If it's a cat, then I can sit there and put the little nose in there like this, and maybe I'll sit there and have maybe the sad sort of shape and the fluffy things, and maybe instead of the ears being up like that, maybe they're down like this, so that even that's a further extension of the sadness, you know, or maybe you know, and the same thing over here. What happens is that, and I'm going to do it over here, is that you could actually start to experiment just with eyes alone. And this is really fun, and I love doing this actually. I'll sit there and I'll say like this. I'll actually, sometimes I'll even start with just the eyebrows. I'll start and say, okay, I want to look over in this direction over here. Well, what if I did this? What if I did a thing sort of like this, where it's looking up into the direction that I want to look? And then I draw the eyes in and I put them into this direction here like this. And I'm looking up. All of a sudden, everything opens up into the area that I want to go. And I don't even have I don't even know what it is. It could be a cat, it could be a dog, it could be a rabbit, it could be anything else. And all of a sudden now I'm communicating an attitude that's revealing something that's inside this simple shape. Now everything else that I do to that is going to either add to it or it's going to complicate it. In other words, it might be something where I can actually say, even though it looks concerned, I'm going to just, for the sake of make this into a sort of a really quick human, even though it's not part of this course, I'm going to actually sit there and go, what if I put a smile on there? Like this. I'm going to try to keep the head sort of still round. I'm just going to give him a little thing. All of a sudden, that changes everything. Now, what if I changed it and I turned it into a frown, like this? That changes it everything. Well, what that starts to do is when you're dealing with your characters, as you would see here, you're using a combination of different spices. I will call those emotional spices, just for lack of another, for any kind of term, since there never really was one. You're combining facial smiles with the eye shape itself, with the eyebrows, and the tilt of the head, or the angle of the head, and all of those come together to sort of create a recipe that is uniquely what you create. And that's where I think it starts to get exciting, because it's sort of like everybody has a different fingerprint. You then open up a whole window to what you want to say. And it's the very reason why certain cartoonists are really dynamic in being able to create a series like Calvin and Hobbes that has its unique own drawing style, that projects unique personalities, that in themselves those characters project different, unique to who they are. And when you see a drawing of Calvin, you say, oh wow, you know who he is by how the chemistry or the combination of expressions that the artist put together for that character. So that's kind of a fun part. I love that, and it goes really way beyond that, because you can even get into the point of saying like, well, let me see if it's an upshot like this. I mean, maybe it can come down to, are the eyes close together? Maybe this character is more of a kind of a goofy, sort of a character where the eyes are very close together, meaning that there's a lot of negative space around the eyes. Maybe he's sort of looking very closely at something that's not that far away from him. Notice how I create not just the eye shape, but I really emphasize it by having the point in the center, because that really sort of drives everything to what I want to see. Maybe then I'm going to go like this and really push the eyebrows up like this. And maybe I'm going to just sort of create a, sort of a nose like this and have, an expression down here with the mouth of just that. Ooh. All of a sudden everything starts to play together, and it's just a drawing. But it's not just a drawing, it's a character. It's somebody that, is really expressing something that I want to say. And that's where it gets really dynamic, and you can start to apply those to these characters here, to the cat. You can start to use the shape of the eyebrows and the eyes and the mouth and the body attitude and so forth to do that.